What's up, guys? Obviously, it's Captain Obvious, and let's talk Battlefield 4. Now, Battlefield 4 was recently leaked on the Origin website as a pre-order bonus you get from pre-ordering Medal of Honor Warfighter. And now I know a lot of you guys already know about this. You're like, oh, Battlefield 4, it's old news. We know it's coming out. Don't talk about it again. But I actually have a substantial topic to talk to you guys about today. And I have a lot of things that actually make sense for Battlefield 4 and what I feel it should actually be. And now these are going to be rational ideas, things I actually thought of and, thought in deep and depthly about how I feel they can actually make Battlefield 4 different from Battlefield 3. And now the concern to me is that Battlefield 4 will eventually probably end up a lot like Battlefield 3 in some ways. They're going to have the same gun mechanics most likely. They're going to have the same exact map structure. They're going to have the close range maps and then the bigger maps, 3 or 4 of them. But what I feel that Battlefield 4 has to do is completely change the face of the first-person shooter genre. And now, back in the day, Call of Duty, Halo, and Medal of Honor defined the FPS genre. Nowadays, it's just Battlefield and Call of Duty that are really showing off what these FPSs can do. Sure, Medal of Honor is in there with Warfighter and 2010, but you gotta admit, they're not that big of games compared to Battlefield and Call of Duty. And they're really not trying anything new. It's just borrowing elements from a Call of Duty close quarters-esque game and from a Battlefield Frostbite 2 engine sort of area and the weapon customization options and the graphics and the engine and things like that. So they're borrowing some elements from Battlefield and they're borrowing some elements from Call of Duty, making it sort of a hybrid of the two. But in reality, Battlefield and Call of Duty are defining the FPS genre, or the modern military shooter genre, I might say, in the current year. So what Battlefield 4 has to do is completely change the face of exactly what the genre is going to be. And I feel there's one thing that they can do for that, and that is scale. Now, the thing that the FPS genre has lacking is the scale of the game. Let's compare the size of the game of Battlefield 3 versus that of Grand Theft Auto 4. Now, Grand Theft Auto 4 is an enormous game. You can have like 16 people in a server at one time. Though that's not as much as a Battlefield game on PC, you just have to imagine the scale that's in that game. The entire city of Liberty City is in that environment. Now, let's also take a look at Skyrim and the scale of that game. A lot of games are getting bigger these days. The scale of these are getting bigger. Halo 4 is going to be a huge game from what I have heard. Medal of Honor Warfighter seems it's going to be a bigger game in terms of the campaign. Not quite certain about the Medal multiplayer on that. It's still a mystery to most of us as to what exactly it's going to be like. But the scale of these games is increasing dramatically over the next few years. Call of Duty is even changing their scale. I mean, look at the campaign of Black Ops 2. They're adding in these new side missions that take you away from the track of the main linear campaign. They're adding in new multiplayer modes, new customization options. So the scale of these games is getting so much bigger over the years. And that's what Battlefield 4 has to hit right on the head. They have to increase the scale of Battlefield 3 2, 3, 4 times to make Battlefield 4 actually an attractive game to a lot of the audience. And the key to making the scale bigger is the next gen. Now, next generation consoles are slated for either announcement or release within the next year, 2013, early 2014 area. And the problem is that these current generation consoles, the PlayStation 3, the Xbox 360, they've been out for about, is it like 9 years? No, sorry, like 7 years. They've been out for about 7 years. And if they push it off another 2 or 3 years, these consoles are going to be out for like 10 or 11 years, which is not good in a life cycle of a console. The hardware is extremely outdated. I actually did some research on what exactly the graphics card is in the Xbox 360. It is a custom-made graphics card that at the time ATI made for the system that only ran at 500 megahertz. Now, at the time, that was a blistering speed from what I read. But now, I mean, graphics cards are getting upwards around 900 megahertz, which is almost twice as fast as the older graphics card that the Xbox 360 has in it. So the key to this, the scale, is that next gen. So the Xbox 720, PlayStation 4, whatever they're going to be called, has to be able to handle the scale that Battlefield 4 is going to need. Now, what is it going to need? It's going to need enormous maps. That's how it's going to do it. As of right now, Battlefield 3 has 2 or 3 enormous maps. Karg Island, Operation Firestorm, and Caspian Border. Those are the big maps in Battlefield 3 in Conquest mode, large that is. So what Battlefield 4 has to do is it has to expand on that. It has to make the maps even bigger. Now, Armor Kill is moving in the right direction. They're adding in a whole lot more vehicular combat, but they're not adding in the other thing that they need, player count. Now, Battlefield 4 is going to need a few things. Scale, which I've talked about in the past in this commentary a lot. It's going to need big maps, bigger than Battlefield 3 even. And it's also going to need the player capacity to handle it. What I think Battlefield 4 has to go for is the epic battles. And now, when Battlefield 3 was about to come out, they were advertising the epic battles that you'll have on these maps. And they never really happened. So, what Battlefield 4 has to do is deliver on these giant maps and make the battles extraordinary. Now, the next gen for the Xbox 360 or the PlayStation, whatever they're going to do for these consoles, has to be able to handle large player amounts to make Battlefield 4 actually an attractive game for people to buy. I'm thinking possibly 32v32 or 64v64, depending upon what the next gen can handle. Now, obviously, at the time, the PCs will be better than the current generation consoles by about a year. I mean, when the current generation is outdated and the next gen moves in, there's going to be PCs that are updated pretty much around the same time, increasing the leap forward that the next generation after that has to take. So, I think the key to the console is going to increase the player count, increase the size of the maps, and make the scale that much bigger. Have many battles going on in these maps at the same time. Remember MAG and the 256 players we had on that game? Think about it. If we could have a Battlefield game like that with the graphics, with the amount of players, with the amount of weapons, with the amount of customization, with the amount of vehicles, all in that game at one time, think of what a fascinating game that could be. We could have just giant open maps. I was thinking with my friend Almost Evil 33 the other day, we were talking in our Skype chat, and we were thinking about what they could do in terms of sea combat. Now, Battlefield 3 lacked sea combat, which is something I have always sort of been sad about. I mean, I would love to see sea warfare. You know how cool that would be? They had the boats in this game, but no one ever used them. So just think about it. Imagine battleships fighting each other in a Battlefield game. You know how epic the proportions of this could be if they actually hit it on the head and do it right? That is a fascinating thought. If we could have battleships, aircraft carriers, PT boats, and all that stuff going at battle in the middle of the ocean, I think that could make an amazing Battlefield game. Like, you could have a giant, I'm just, speculating here, it's all hypothetical. You could have just a giant harbor of a Battlefield map. You have infantry on the ground, on the docks of this place. And then out in the sea, we have a battleship fight. Like, you can have, it doesn't necessarily have to be like 20 people in the ship at one time. It can be like 5 or 6 people in the ship, one person driving it, and spotting guys out. We could have somebody navigating. We could have guys on the guns, like the giant massive cannons, firing at the other battleships. I think that would make the game amazing. Now, the other thing that I think they could add is multiple objectives for each area of combat. So let's say we have on the sea, you have to destroy your enemy's aircraft carrier while getting through all of their defenses, such as their battleships, destroyers, and things like that. And then on the land side of things, you got to take out the objectives, you got to capture flags, you got to capture bases. We have multiple objectives at one time that everybody has to focus on, and that could increase the scale twofold, making the amount of things that have to be done in a single Battlefield 4 game a whole lot more, increasing the effectiveness of the team play and making it a whole lot more enjoyable for everybody. So I feel like the key to Battlefield 4's success is going to be A, scale, B, large maps, C, player count on consoles and PC, and D, that multiple objectives sort of task that the teams have to go through to win the game. I think it can be a great thing for the Battlefield series, and that can even advance the FPS genre that much further into actually becoming an amazing genre and one of the front runners in the entire video game world. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video, and if you did, remember to check me out on Twitter. The link is in the description. And as always, rate, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys later.